Welcome everyone back to the arena. Today we have a special guest, and really special because if you're a longtime follower of the show, then you know that this isn't the first time we've had this guest. She is the first ever guest to return for a second time. That's how good the first conversation was, people. This is Madeline Kivett. I hope I pronounced that right.
Mhm.
I got it. Okay. She's a senior at Winthrop and a mental health advocate through her volunteer work with NAMI, as well as her Instagram page. Your mental health is a priority that I think amasses a following of more than 60,000 people now, which is, I think, 20,000 more than when we first spoke with you. So y'all are growing nicely. Madeline, thank you so much for being on and returning. Obviously, we are so excited to chat with you. Why don't you give people that didn't hear the first conversation just like who is Madeline and why mental health? Like, why is this such a passion of yours?
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for having me back. I always love having these conversations. And just being able to be open about mental health and giving others that hope and kind of that jump to do so themselves. But yeah, my name's Madeline. I'm 21. I live in South Carolina. I go to Winthrop University. And I have been advocating for mental health since 2021. I endured a lot of really hard battles with my own mental health when I was in high school. Specifically junior year. It was the year after COVID. And so it was really tough, getting back into school and then also navigating the new feelings that I think everyone was probably feeling with COVID. But yeah, I went through a lot of really tough anxiety, driving anxiety, just everyday anxiety, social anxiety, anxiety, really just everything. And also some really dark, depressive times that were scary and kind of hard to navigate from time to time. But I just realized, as I was struggling with things, that I wasn't fully aware of the things that I was being diagnosed with because I had never formally been taught or formally learned about them. And so it was basically my goal to one, educate myself on the things that were going on in my own brain, but also be able to spread awareness and make people want to talk about it more so that people wouldn't feel as alone as I did when I was going through it at first, not knowing what was happening. Um, so yeah, I started a mental health account in September of 2021 on Instagram. We're coming up on 4 years at the end of this month, which is crazy. I can't believe that it's been that long. But we've made a lot of friends along the way. We've connected with really good people. We've started a podcast. Been a little slack on getting episodes up, but I'm hoping to get that back up and going soon. And yeah, it's just been really fun to get to connect with everyone in the community, building a community, and seeing the way that they all love each other and lean on each other and are there for each other so much, just as strangers, gives me an immense hope for society and where we're going in society. And I'm just so happy that I'm able to be a part of that.
So actually, I was gonna go somewhere, but we're gonna go a different direction. On that point, you run a social media account solely on mental health advocacy and awareness of. Oh, what's up? Is it Toby?
Yeah, that's Toby.
What's up, Toby? So of more than 60,000 people, you obviously I think get a unique insight into maybe what people are going through when they message you directly and just general challenges. Like, what are you seeing people struggle with the most currently, and how have you seen community be like a healing force in terms of what people are going through mentally?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think what I see most online, with people who I'm in contact with from the account, is 99% of the time anxiety and depression. Sometimes you'll get the occasional OCD, which is very it's very likely and common for OCD to be associated with anxiety. So they kind of go hand in hand in certain situations. But mostly anxiety and depression, and anxiety to the point of like being scared of going somewhere, or having anxiety over like being in public or being super social. I for a long time was the only person that I knew who had really bad driving anxiety, to the point where I didn't drive for several years in a row. But as I've been doing this more and connecting with more people, it's even more common than I thought. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. So that's also something, but also depression. And I think a lot of it stems from like being down and being insecure about like themselves because of how they're treated in society, whether it's bullying, whether it's people, just picking fun, but like it's not fun when it's hurting other people. And just like those conversations, I remember I went live at like mid-August for the first time in, like, months, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I needed to have this conversation so bad. I'm so glad you're here." And it was all like, "I'm struggling with anxiety. How can I help myself? I'm having panic attacks. What do I do?" Or depressive, "I'm having really dark depressive thoughts." And that was kind of like the main topic of conversation. And so I would think, I mean, and when people think about mental health, I think those are the 2 prominent things that they think about, like, that come to their head, are anxiety and depression, but they're definitely the most popular, I think, in, like, at least people who are my age right now.
On that topic, I wanted to really get your thoughts on something I came across the other day, which is, and I'm sure you run into sort of this sort of debate um, pretty often in your world, which is how do we reconcile? Because you mentioned something in your introduction earlier around being diagnosed and like learning what is it exactly that you're experiencing and going through. And I saw somebody deposit a thought around like, well, you're letting that define you, or you're adopting that in the sense of like identity. And so I'm like curious how you reconcile and how you help others reconcile this idea of like diagnosis without letting it define who you are, and like how to avoid this sort of perception that this is stemmed out of victimhood and more out of just a reality that, there still exists a reality in which you can empower yourself to, I don't know if cure is the right word here, but move beyond these diagnoses.
Yeah, so I was actually talking with a friend about this last night because I think sometimes the narrative in people's heads is like, I've been through this and now this defines me and this is who I am. And I think a lot of times it is that domino effect of starting with, this is what I'm doomed to deal with for the rest of my life, and this is who I'm always going to be. And then it goes from there, and it's like, okay, it's never going to get better. I'm always going to be this. I'm always going to have this. And like I was telling a friend last night, what we go through shapes who we are and it shapes who we become, but it doesn't define us as a person. Meaning like I'm not like mental health, like I'm not like a mental health condition. I'm not depression, I'm not anxiety. But I am who I am because of those things. And I think the beginning of it, when you first get diagnosed with those things and you're looking at the paper and you're like, this is me and I don't want to be this and this is not what I want. I think the first step in that is acceptance, and being able to accept that, like, these things are happening to me. This is going on in my brain, but I know that, like, I can recover and that it's not forever. Although I, like, personally have lived with mental health conditions for X amount of years, I don't think that I'm going to live in like a severe anxious state or a severe depressive state for my whole life. I know that like when those things happen, they only come in like small increments. And even though it feels so long and so never ending, even if it's only a couple hours or a couple days, like those feelings eventually go away. And that's what I try to tell people is like, don't hold on to like the negative that you have and that you're feeling. Like try to hold on to like the thought of like, you are bigger than this and there are bigger things that exist that are around you that you're going to experience and that you're going to see, like once you just get through this moment. And I think that's like really important.
What was your experience with acceptance in that process? I- is it the day of diagnosis you chose, I'm going to accept this? Is it something where you have to wake up every morning and choose to do that? Like, walk us through, and I think this is so important for folks to hear, like, acceptance is not just a button you push, right? Like, what
Mhm.
is that experience in your life, and what does that look like tangibly in your day-to-day life?
Yeah. Well, for me, like the first time I ever got diagnosed was when I was actually 14. And so, at that point, like I really was confused and didn't know what was going on. And they put me on a medicine, and in my head, I was like, oh, so now I have to take this to be happy, and I'm never gonna be normal again because I can never be happy without taking this. And I was stuck like in that, like in that mindset. And then as I, like, got older, I kind of, like, grew out of it, like, a little bit, out of, like, the anxiousness, and then it came back, like, full circle when I was a junior in high school, so I was, like, 16. But I think it took me, like, a long time because I went back to I went back to the doctor, I got re-diagnosed with, like, more things, and it was like, okay, I was so, like I mean, I, just like everyone else, was, like, so down on myself, and I'm like, "They're telling
Madeline, can
me."
I jump in with a question that just kind of arose real time?
Yeah, of
Because I'm
course.
curious. When you went to the doctor, if you recall, like, are you going with the intent, like, what's going through your head? Are you like, I hope they diagnose me, like, this will explain why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, or are you like, I hope they don't? Like, what's running through your head?
I think a little bit of both was true for me. It's like when you have like a sore throat or something and you go to the doctor and you're like, I really don't want to be sick, but I kind of hope I am so they can give me antibiotics and I can feel better instead of taking Tylenol that's not working. Like it's kind of like that mindset, but it was like I just was like so desperate to figure out like what was going on in my head that I was like eager for an answer, because it was at the point where I was like living through suicidal ideation and like really bad like anxiousness at and in places that I wasn't usually anxious. And so I'm going to the doctor and I'm like, I need answers. Like, I'm like, I hope she can help me. And so that was like my mindset, even though I didn't really know like what the ideal answer would be for me. I don't know that I had something in my head of like, I really hope it's this instead of this. Like, I really was just eager to find out what it was and to find a solution. Um, so that's pretty much was what was running through my head. It's like the same thing like when you're sick. But like I don't think I like when she told me and then cuz they have you fill out the sheet of like, in the last 30 days, have you felt this way? Have you felt this way? And it's like I always tell people like be truthful, be honest on that because that is like how essentially you're going to get the help that you need. And so I think, like, the acceptance process probably didn't start that day for me, it probably was weeks following, and just understanding that, like, going through the emotions and I think a lot of it was in therapy, like, when I went to therapy, I'm like, "Okay, I can understand these feelings more, I can talk through these feelings with that like, feeling like I actually know what I'm talking about because I have someone who's, like, equipped to have this conversation." Um so for me, like, acceptance really just looked like being able to be like, "Okay, like, this is what's happening. It's happening whether we like it or not, and now we need to just figure out, like, how it's going to get better. How I'm gonna get better, like, every day. Like, every day is gonna look different, but every day is, like, an inch closer to figuring out, like, what's going on truly, how to navigate these feelings that I'm having, how to understand them so that I know, like, how to make myself feel better, and then essentially, like, knowing how or figuring out how to, like, get over it or get through it is a better way to put it.
And so, what role does and has community played in your recovery journey, just ongoing, you know, being a human being and dealing with the struggles of life, both from your experience as well as what you have with the Instagram page and your mental health is a priority, and you mentioned people coming together and, oh my God, this is what I need. Like, would love to just hear a little bit more on your perspective around community, what it's done for you, what you feel it's done for your community, quite literally on Instagram, etc.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, like when I first started the Instagram, it was like I just like was I on like the biggest thing for me was just I need to help other people. And honestly, I never really had like a thought that like they could help me too, because I'm like, well, I'm the one who's like doing, like I'm posting and I'm advocating and I'm talking, but I never like had a vision that they would be like talking back and like advocating with me and like helping me through things. And so I was super nervous at first because I was nervous about like what people would say, and I was nervous about being judged, and things like that. Just normal like high school feelings of like, what are they gonna think? What are they gonna say? Um, and as it like went on, I just wasn't afraid anymore, and it was like the like building a community and knowing that you have people to fall back on is just it's one of those things that it's not only, like, eye-opening, but it just brings, like, a sense of comfort in knowing that, like, yes, okay, things might be really bad, but, like, think about all these people who care about me, and knowing like, I think for them, like, one of the things that I have tried to stress as much as I can in lives, on podcasts, or just even, like, stories is, like, I want people who follow us to feel like they have 60,000 other friends, because that's what I want the community to be like. I'm working on, like, making a Discord right now, and then that will be so much easier for people to, like, communicate and, like, chat and become friends, but, like, I want us to I don't wanna just be, like, some Instagram account that people follow. I want them to feel like they belong and have a place in it, and so building those friendships with people and, like, seeing how, like, oh my gosh, they give back to me, and just understanding, like, the impact and the change that you can have when you all come together is truly incredible. Like, I think I saw that firsthand as just one of the examples that comes to my head is when we did the toy drive for Christmas last year. It was like, okay, we have, like, probably, like, 55,000 followers at that time. I'm like, "We're gonna do the toy drive. You guys are just gonna donate whatever." We ended up donating, like, over 100 gifts for kids, and it was like, me? Like, I started something that was able to do that? Like, it's mind-blowing, but it truly is telling of the things that and the opportunities that you can do and that you can have and, like, the dreams that you can accomplish when you just come and work together for, like, a common passion and a common goal.
That's a very unique, I think, experience with social media. I think social media, and purposely being vague here, it doesn't always get the best rep. So I'm curious, like, what's your outlook on, and maybe what your relationship is with social media generally? What would you tell somebody who says like social media is the demon and is terrible for your mental health? And I'm sure you can understand where they're coming from. So how do you reconcile the two point of views?
Well, I'm like firmly a believer that anything can be bad and anything can be good. So if you use social media the correct way, you'll have a good outcome. If you use it negatively, then you'll have a negative outcome. And for me, it's like there's obviously more people on social media who use it for the wrong reasons than they do the right reasons. And to protect my own peace, I try to not like dabble in those kinds of areas of the internet. But I would tell someone who thinks that social media is terrible, I would tell them to look for the good communities that are in like within Instagram, within TikTok, because they do exist. I would tell them to probably engage in like positive algorithms and like more happy, like upbeat algorithms. I know right now my TikTok is like my For You page is like gut wrenching. And I was just like, "Okay, I guess, like, this is what I've been interacting with, so this is what they're showing me." It's just, like, sad stuff all the time, and I'm like, "Okay, I did something wrong here because this is not what I wanna see." And so, like, the algorithm pushes, like, what you interact with, what you engage with, and so if you go in, like, with an intention to only engage and interact with the good, you have a better, like, chance of only seeing the good and the positive energy, but if like you are going online to like spread hate or like make hate comments or, like deflect your insecurities onto other people, there's a good chance that you're going to run into a lot more of that. And so I think like going in with good intentions, looking for like what you're actually interested in and what you know isn't going to bring you like negative thoughts or negative attention is always super important because I feel like I am like a testimony to like what can happen when you use social media for good.
I just really appreciate that perspective, because I do think there's this stigma around social media that it's all bad. And what I think, because of how the algorithms are structured now, it's really exposing you. And I think it's a really accountable, the perspective you have is an accountable one, because the algorithm shows you what you click on, like to be honest, outside of what, the whole Charlie Kirk thing, I feel like I couldn't even go on social media because my algorithm just got blown up regardless, like everywhere I clicked. But notwithstanding that, everything is self-help, uh, like mindset for me personally, because that's what I consume when I do consume social media. And so if you're complaining that what you're getting fed is not helpful to your mental health, I think there's ways too that you can like reset your algorithm. You just click and like a bunch of like positive videos, and you can kind of reset it pretty quickly. So there are ways around it. But I think it's those that are kind of playing into that victimhood mentality that claim social media is so bad, and it's not their fault, it's social media's, where I really don't think there's anywhere to blame other than looking in the mirror, which is how they're structured now. um my question for you is, how can we be better friends? I'm trying to think how to phrase that, but like, how can we support people? Like, someone's going through something challenging. I think there's this desire to fix it immediately. Like, we got to fix the problem. But like, because you're someone that is constantly interacting with your community and probably holding space for some pretty heavy stuff, like, how do you handle that? And how would you suggest people handle that?
Well, I don't know if like the term emotional intelligence or that would be like applicable here, but I like to think of it as that, like being emotionally intelligent or even like emotionally mature is really important. Because there's a lot of things that people like talk to me about online that like I wouldn't have had the stability, like the mental stability to hear or give advice back to like 2 years ago. Or even when I started this whole like Instagram journey. Um I think that I was talking to my grandma about this the other day actually. When it comes down to it, I have a really hard time with people trying to give like advice or um like unsolicited advice on what they should do with their life when they've never been in that position. And so when someone comes to me and they're talking to me about something going on in their life and I've never been through that, I'm like, I don't know where you're coming from because I've never been there and I can't act like I do or that I do know or that I have been there. But I'm here for you and let me know how I can support you based on your circumstances. And I think that that's really important because if I understand something because I've been through it like a panic attack or like a really depressive episode, my natural instinct is going to be to give them advice based on what worked for me because that's just like from my experience, this is what worked and maybe it'll work for you too. But when we don't have that like personal experience with something that someone went through, it's hard to feel like you relate to them. And then it almost feels like you're trying to be like, well, this is what you should be doing with your life instead of this. And I hate that. It comes off judgmental. It comes off like you're not actually trying to help them. You're just being like, kind of passive aggressive in a way. Um, and so I think just even when you can't relate to someone, I think just being like supportive and like what that looks like is just being like, hey, whether I understand what you're going through or not, I'm here for you and I'll be a listening ear. And even if I haven't been through like what you're talking about, I can still tell you that like you have a friend in me, you're not alone, you're loved by me especially, and maybe these things will help if, you wanna try that out, like therapy or depending on what they're talking about. And so, yeah, I that's one of those big things that I've been trying to stress to people recently because in my experience with driving anxiety, I have a lot of noise from people around me who are like, well, you should really just get in the car and do it, or you should really just drive here. And I'm like, you should really mind your business because you have no idea what you're talking about. And I don't ever want to make someone feel that way.
So, Madeline, I mean, it's been a while since, or I guess I'll speak for myself, since I've been on a college campus. But curious what the temperature around mental health is these days. Madeline, just given that you've been on college campuses and I haven't been in a while, and I do feel like the language and the talking points around all things mental health is fast evolving in a positive way. I am curious, like, how does it feel to be on a college campus? Like, what are you hearing in the lunchrooms, in the walkways? Just how are people talking about mental health? Is this language becoming more widely adopted? Are you still feeling like you're in the minority, screaming into the void? What does it feel like to be Madeline on a college campus these days?
Um, I definitely think I'm still in the minority more than I would like to be. Um, it's unfortunate because I know that like if if we could come together and like talk about it, like we it would be different. Um, but I think that people like I think people who like like gotten to know me now and have who didn't know me before are like kind of stepping into the mental health realm after seeing what I've done. And people have told me that. Like people I've become friends with, they're like, I didn't really think about mental health, but now that like I've become friends with you, I've looked into it and like I'm talking about it more, I'm thinking about it more. And so the more that I talk about it, it would be my hope that more people feel that way, or I make them like more people feel that way, and then they go talk about it because they want to make people feel the way I made them feel. And so just I think that, because I feel like when I'm, like, on campus and I'm with my friends, like, no one's really talking about it, and, like, if I bring it up, like, we might have a little discussion, but it's not, like, being talked about, like, out loud on just, like, a regular, like, everyday basis. And, ever since, like, I joined the sorority last semester, I was with one of my friends who's in it with me the other day, and she was like, I feel like you brought that like mental health aspect to our chapter and like to our sorority that we didn't have before. And now I feel like people are more open about like we've all been more open about like talking about our feelings and like just talking about like what's going on in life, how things are affecting us ever since you've been here. And like that makes my heart happy because that's my goal. Like, I want to make people feel comfortable and, like they can talk about what they're going through, and, like, we all, like, have a safe space because with your friends, like, you should have a safe space with your friend like, with people that you talk to and hang out with. And so, yeah, I really like that aspect, but as far as, like, everyday, like, daily basis goes, I'm not running into a whole lot of mental health conversations, but I'm trying to create them.
In terms of, you had mentioned people, I guess I'll share a story. I think I've shared this at some point on the podcast. You'd have to be an avid listener to remember which episode it was because I don't. So that's probably not that many people have heard this story, but
I'll see if I
there,
can remember it.
there was one of my old coworkers. His daughter was a freshman at the University of Florida, I think last year, and as part of their sorority, she was in, I guess they had some like night, basically a confession night. It's kind of what it sounded like, where everyone has to like go and share something vulnerable, basically, something along those lines. And one girl shared that she had an eating disorder. And as soon as she did, like every other, I mean, not everyone, but like tons of other girls were like, I do too. I have an eating disorder. I have an eating disorder. And so I guess I would love to just get your thoughts on that, Madeline. When you hear that, I saw your eyes kind of light up. And also, I think it just highlights why it's so important to lead with vulnerability because there are so many other people that are thinking or going through the same thing you are, but just feel uncomfortable and maybe have some shame around it and don't feel comfortable sharing. and think they'll be viewed as, a failure or inadequate or unworthy or whatever it might be. So I guess I'm just curious for your perspective on that as someone who, recently joined a sorority and, on college campuses.
Yeah. No, I kind of like when you first said like they went and said something vulnerable about themselves. I before you said the other part, I was a little like, wow, because it feels like almost like an uncomfortable situation to put people in to share something vulnerable about themselves with a new group of people. But it does open an opportunity for like that kind of thing to happen. And I think that's super cool because if I know that, like, if I were in a position where I wasn't so open and like talked so freely about what I went through, if someone was like, I'm just really anxious right now and I have really bad anxiety, I would be like, hey, like, I do too. And so I think, like you said, leading by vulnerability and also leading by example is so important, especially in those environments. Um, that's a great idea, and maybe that's something that I will bring up to someone and we can do an activity like that because it would be fun, and, like, I think building relationships and stuff, like, it does take a little bit of vulnerability to, like, open up and for people to really, like, see who you are and for you to really see who they are, and so I think that's important, but I love that story just because it really does make a difference when you openly say something like that because I'm one of those people who, if I'm with my group of friends or if I'm, like, for instance, at a sorority event, like 2 weeks ago, I was just really having a hard time mentally, have no idea why, but I just was. And so, I would, like, cry on the way there, and I'd come in and my makeup would be, like, streaked down my face, and we'd have to, like, take pictures and stuff, and I was like, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, I look terrible, I'm having such a hard time." But, like, I want everyone in the room to know that, like, I'm struggling. So let's talk about it, like, just let me talk about it so that, like, someone else can hear me, and that will make me feel better. But not everyone is like that. Sometimes you'll never know when someone's struggling because they'll never show up. Like, they'll never say anything. Like, they'll show up, but they'll just look fine. And so you never know. But I love that. And I think that part of me, like, being open and just freely talking about whatever is on my mind is like helping other people who are around me who may not be so comfortable become more comfortable. And I think if we all did that, we would all feel a lot more comfortable about talking about mental health in general.
Yeah, I guess, and I'm gonna kind of pivot, Kobe. So if you wanted to ask something related, yeah. So because as I'm hearing you speak about it, it's like using words like disorder and diagnosis and mental health, and like these are some pretty scary words, and I wonder if you've had conversations or if you've thought about just how much like language plays a role in some of this, people's aversion to conversing about mental health, because the idea of saying, I have a disorder, that alone is so scary that I think it can incite some denial or avoidance around that. And I'm just curious, like, how can we reframe it, or how have we thought through reframing that? More just an open-ended question that has just come up, not something that I expect anyone to have like a clear-cut answer to, but how much do you guys feel that language has a huge role in how people think about mental health currently?
I have always said that stigmatizing language is super harmful. And a lot of times people like say stigmatizing words and they don't realize it because they just don't know. But for instance, I never say mental illness ever. I have completely cut that whole like word out of my vocabulary because it just feels harsh. It feels like I don't know. I just don't like it. And so I have started using mental health condition because illness just like sounds like you're sick. Like I don't like that because when you have a mental health condition, you're not sick. And like the way I like to look at it is like mental health is an injury. It's not an illness. Like it's not some sort of like what is the word? Chronic thing that's going to kill you. Like it's an injury and you can recover from it.
Right. In some very small cases, it might be, but for the
Yeah,
majority, when we
right.
speak, it's yeah,
Well,
it
and
totally.
like Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I use the word recover, meaning like you don't live every day feeling like this. It's not like every second of every day. But I really tried to stress that to like high school students who I go talk to, people around me. I cannot stand, like, it instantly makes my skin crawl when someone says KMS or kill myself, or I'm just gonna kill myself, as like a like, oh no, I have an assignment due tonight, I'm gonna kill myself. There's nothing that makes me more mad, like 0 to 100 in a second, because it's like, God forbid someone who's around you was thinking about killing themselves last night. You've just reminded them of that because you have a minor inconvenience. You don't actually mean it. And so we have to be more aware of the words that we're using, and also more aware of our surroundings, of seeing like who is around us. We don't know who these people, like what these what these people are going through. We don't know what they could be struggling with. And so replacing things like illness with condition, it just sounds better. When it comes down to like eating disorders, I I think you have to use the word disorder with eating disorder. Sometimes I'll like when people tell me that they have an eating disorder, I'm like, so do you have a hard time? Do you have a really bad relationship with food? Like that can be a way to refrain it differently. Um, yeah, so I think the way that we it's all perspective based. I think it's the way we look at it, the way that we interpret it, but also the way that we are self-aware and aware of the fact that like people are going through things all the time, and we just need to remember that, and we need to be really careful with the words that we use because it just further stigmatizes mental health.
I have a similar perspective. I've been very, very mindful of my language maybe over the last, I mean, especially 3 years, but even more so over the last year or two, just because the more I feel like I've learned about psychology and how like our brains work, like the more I realize just how much your words really matter and the way you talk to yourself really matters. And so, I mean, for me, obviously anything around like if I hear that's gay, like, yeah, I've said that a million times, when I was growing up, or people say it with no harmful intent of like, you know, um, hurting people of that community, but it really does deepen that belief about yourself, about that group of people, whether you realize it or not. And so I certainly think language matters. I'm always, I mean, to the point where I try not to use the words like I can't. Like I'll use, I just haven't figured it out yet, or I haven't solved it yet, just because I just don't like using that. Like, it's not that I can't, I can't do it. I haven't figured it out yet. Like, I do think stuff like that matters. And maybe to some people it sounds funny, but I've seen it have an impact in the relationship that I have with myself and the world around me. Curious, MD, for your thoughts, but I think it's really important. I really do think our words. I've been very mindful over the last couple of years of what I say, especially to myself.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts there is that it's actually timely because I've kind of caught myself being a better coach than player, where I'm quick to like I very much align to subscribe to self-talk and being mindful of language, and it's so easy for me to hear somebody and be like, well, that's negative self-talk. How do we reframe that? But then the other day I called myself a piece of shit, because like I didn't do anything over the weekend, right? And somebody actually called me out on that. And it really just like reversed it on me. And the awareness of the self-talk is there. But actually putting it into practice and executing it and actually playing the game at the way that it's supposed to be played, right? I think that's something I'm focused on, which is how do I ensure that I'm practicing what I preach, not to, holding myself to a perfection standard, but how do I ultimately, practice what I preach and look out for myself and not just other people? And I think that's been a little bit of like a cycle I've had to work through a little bit.
And I think I just think it's important to, I think it's important for other people to hear, like setting that boundary in a lot of cases for things you may not stand for, because a lot of people just aren't aware of it. And by voicing it for your own benefit, it actually helps the other person as well. Now, they might not want to hear it, but deep down, like, I mean, there's so many people that use rhetoric that they have for years and years and years, not realizing the consequences it's had on other people around them until it like directly impacts someone so much that they're actually willing to say something. And it's like, oh my gosh, that wasn't my intent. But regardless of your intent, your actions have consequences. And so I do think language matters quite a bit. It's been, pretty timely and top of mind for me. So I'm glad you asked that question, MD. Um, I guess, Madeline, I'm curious as we kind of get to the end here. Like, we talked to you 2 years ago. You're very hyper focused on, mental health, your own well being, mental health of those around you. Like, how has your relationship with yourself, with your mental health, more generally with anxiety? I'll let you kind of take the question however you'd like, but how has that evolved since the last time we spoke?
Oh, I feel like I've like humbly I say that I feel like I've matured so much, and I don't know that I would have, or if I would feel that way if I didn't have these experiences. Um like the Instagram, the community, having the experience of going and talking to students and people who live these things every day like I used to and still do regularly. Um but honestly, I think I have a better outlook on when I'm having a hard time. It's really easy to get in your own head and to be stuck in like this feeling of I'm going to be here forever and this really sucks, and you know just being hard on yourself and just having negative outlooks on everything. But I think like one of the biggest things is I've like really swallowed the thought of like they're just thoughts. And not in a way of like you're being dramatic, they're just thoughts, but in a way of like they're just thoughts. Like it's okay. Because although they're scary, although they're impulsive, although it can make like literally just make you feel like nothing, it just like they're just thoughts. And I have to remind myself that like I'm in control. This is my brain. I get to decide how I'm going to kind of like navigate the way this makes me feel, or how I'm going, or like how what am I going to do today? I'm not going to let that depend on what my mind is telling me. Like I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to do what I need to get done. And I think that is a lot different from the last time that we spoke, because I know that we recorded I think in like May of 2023, and I fell into like a dark place in like that whole summer, and like I was not, thinking clearly about like how I was going to navigate that and how I was going to get through it. And so I think that is growth also. But it's just, I think I feel, like, happy that, like, I've gone through the things that I've gone through so that I can be the person that I am now, and I am, like, able to help people through similar experiences. I like you guys were saying, I try to talk to myself better, because I know if I'm talking like, if I'm encouraging myself out loud, like, other people around me are gonna start encouraging themselves. And I know that if I'm talking good about myself in front of other people, they're gonna start talking good about themselves. And so it all comes back to the perspective of leading by example and just, like, creating a good example for people to follow. Because the reality is, like, the good parts of my life and, like, the good parts of like how I advocate, like I want other people to live that life too. I want other people to like be happy about helping other people and like live a life that like where you lead by what you want to see in other people. And I just think that's really important, and I think that has completely like maybe not like not saying I wasn't like that, but like we've grown in that area, and I think I'm on like a good path to continuing that. So
Most definitely on the great path. Have you heard of Dr. Daniel Amen,
I don't
the
think
brain
so.
doctor? You should take a look at him. He's got this thing called ants. and he says, kill the ants, which is don't stop believing every automatic negative thought ant that you have.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, you should share with your community too. He's he's also, I've been doing today's going to be a great day every day for the last 550 days on TikTok. And I got that from him as well. He tells himself every day is going to be a great day. And again, it goes to the power of self-talk and the way you speak to yourself. So Madeline, Kivett, everyone. Madeline, you're a rock star, and it's really inspiring every time we get to speak. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. I'm just happy to be here and glad that I have the opportunity.